Welcome back, everyone, to the 4th episode of Royale Roundtable. As usual, I'm the Rumham with my co-host Naders above me, and our two special guests this week are Clark Kent in the far right corner and Isopa to my side.
What's up?
Today, we're going to be talking about the Inferno Dragon, released just over a week ago, and talking about deck building strategies and theory. So make sure to like the video, subscribe to SuperMagicalCup below, and check out all the Royale Roundtables, history of the meta, SMC TV, and of course, full tournament footage of every SuperMagicalCup going back to the very first one.
Alright, so the newest card in Clash Royale, the Inferno Dragon, has been out for about a week and a half, something like that at this point. I actually just got my first Inferno Dragon, followed by my second to make it level 2, but I haven't played it yet. So I'm going to ask our guest, Clark, have you had a chance to play the Inferno Dragon yet?
Yeah, I actually got it on the first day. Got it off the legendary chest. It actually happened to drop like right when I woke up the first match. So I was like, oh, Yahtzee.
Yeah, Clark's real quick, Clark is the actual worst human being on the planet because all of us were saving up chests. Clark, Naders, and I are on the same clan. So like, we're all saving up chests. The thing drops and all of us go, oh crap, guys, like none of us got the Inferno Dragon. The very next morning, Clark's like, oh, hey, look, they're selling a legendary chest in the shop. I guess I'll open it. And it had an Inferno Dragon in it. And then he spent that whole day sharing replays of like 18 different decks with it to rub it in our face. So yes, Clark, tell us about the Inferno Dragon.
Well, I've had a lot of fun playing with it, but it feels kind of underwhelming right now. It may do better in kind of a tournament atmosphere when everything's level capped, but on the ladder it's kind of weak too right now. Maybe because I haven't under-leveled as a level 1, but still, it feels underpowered and it needs a lot of support to go with it.
Mm-hmm. My most embarrassing loss was I actually lost to a guy on the ladder. I had max level cards. He had a level 9 Mega Minion and a level 1 Inferno Dragon, and he beat me. And I was just like, I'm gonna pack it up forever. Isopa, you've been trying to get that. You're in the same boat as me. Like with the bottom 2 here, we don't have any Inferno Dragons. What do you want that card for? Like, what are you gonna do with it when you finally open it?
I will probably just play it on stream and try out as many like weird decks with it as possible, but I want to play the Inferno Dragon in more defensive decks. Mm-hmm. Something, like double lasers and just cool mirror decks too.
You would play Inferno Dragon with Inferno Tower?
Yeah, that's what I want to try.
What do you see there? Right? Like what's the opening for something like that?
I see, like there are a lot of times where you need more than just like one like huge defense card. There's Inferno Tower, there's Inferno Dragon. That's only like 9 elixir. You can get that set up pretty easily if you're ahead on elixir or something. Mm-hmm. And then if you put it in like in a really far away back place, you can, which you should because like the tank is always going to be walking in. You can always keep it alive for a counterattack. You don't have to like baby it really. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would try to use the Inferno Dragon for, in like a deck like that.
You wouldn't have to baby your dragon?
Yeah, I wouldn't have to baby my dragon.
I think that kind of makes sense to me because you see a lot of decks with redundancy, sort of 2 answers to the same question, say Inferno and Mini P.E.K.K.A, Bowler and Valkyrie or something else like that. I don't know. I think that's we'll get into deck building concepts later, but I think that's kind of a good idea, especially since the little that I've played against Inferno Dragon, it feels like it's not a 1-for-1 replacement for the Inferno Tower. Doesn't quite have the same amount of, it's not going to stick around on the board as well. It's easier for the opponent to remove.
Yeah, I mean, like, so if you look at it in an overview of stats, right, it's got less hit points than the Baby Dragon. It does about half the total damage of an Inferno Tower, but it heats up at the same...
When it's charged up.
Well, yeah, I think from level 1 all the way to max level, it's exactly half. I could be wrong about that, but it heats up at the same rate. But you're right that, like, the front-end damage isn't very impressive. It's not going to be the same as an Inferno Tower over the first couple seconds, and even if you do let it heat up, it's going to take a couple extra seconds to kill a big tank, though. Mm-hmm. I'm most excited about it in It's funny because we were all hoping that Inferno Dragon would stop all these giant push decks, but almost every good idea I have for Inferno Dragon is some sort of like giant deck, golem deck, lava hound, like tanky push deck, and I was like, no, Inferno Dragon, you were the chosen one. Like, you were supposed to bring balance to the force, and you're just hanging out with the evil giant Jedis. I think it's got a lot of potential. There are calls already to buff it. Naders, you know, you played around with it a little bit, and Clark, do you guys think it needs a buff?
Yes, I actually do think it needs a buff, either in damage-wise, as in it heats up faster, or some sort of hit point buff to keep it alive a little bit longer. It just feels like it's way too easy to get rid of, or just, once it's distracted, I mean, you can really take it out with just like skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's probably the most appropriate answer, because I would like to see it be more of an alternative, or as we were talking earlier, some kind of redundant, an additive to Inferno Tower or Mini P.E.K.K.A. Another option to take on giants, golems, bowlers, anything that's got a lot of hit points, and especially things like bowler that are placed in the back, so you've probably got something big in front of it, and you've got to deal with two different threats. Inferno Dragon needs to be able to live just long enough to take care of that thing and be a true counter to it.
Now, what about cards like Miner? Because I remember when Miner was released, people weren't really using it. They didn't think it was that strong, and they went to buff Miner, and I remember the Friday that they announced the buff, Clark Kent won a SuperMagicalCup the very next day, and then the buff goes in on Monday, and it was like this was already a good card. So I'm a little leery about the calls to buff it, because I think that what most people tend to do with new cards is just shove it into existing strategies and then make a judgment call based on, like, is this better or worse than, like, Mini P.E.K.K.A., which is not really the way to evaluate a new card. I kind of want to see it just settle for a little bit. It doesn't seem so egregiously bad that, like, at its worst, it's what, like a middle-of-the-road card? Well, maybe it's okay for a Legendary to be a middle-of-the-road card in a given meta and not just be insane right out of the gates. But I can see it. I definitely agree it's a little fragile. The biggest weakness to me is that it's just another thing that dies to poison. And it doesn't even die to poison, but, like, the big problem I think right now in the game is there's so many, like, 1,000 health-ish units that you can double up with a whole bunch of them and be like, yeah, like I got a Musketeer and a Mini P.E.K.K.A. and these are totally different cards, but a poison just wrecks that push kind of no matter what. And I feel like Baby Dragon's or Inferno Dragon is just another thing that you're putting behind your tank that just gets killed by Fireball, anyways, or Lightning. I think that's this thing I like to see it address. Maybe more hit points.
Well, take any couple other examples of cards that have come out recently, like Guards or Bowler, who at first kind of the community seemed to think that they were underwhelming. Why do these aren't all that special? Blah blah blah. And then after a couple months have passed, even if they didn't get buffed, they kind of find their place in the meta. Guards because there was a lot of mini P.E.K.K.A.s and princes and stuff running around at that time. And Bowler because of the I guess the change that they made to it. I think just more people started playing it. I'm not sure it was that much of a difference between 6 and 5, but I think you're right. The community needs time, first of all, to get the cards up to a playable level on ladder, because that's still, regardless of how great challenge mode and tournament modes are, that's still the primary way that people are playing. They need to get it up to a competitive level on ladder and be able to actually experiment with it a little bit, as opposed to just playing it in the decks that they had before and swapping out one card.
Yeah, minor bummer about being over tournament cap, right? Like, as if you need like a level 2 or 3 legendary to like be competitive with it, then it's you get a bad impression when you just open it and throw it into a deck right away. Isopa, what are your thoughts on Inferno Dragon in terms of like, if like you said you want to play it in the double Inferno deck, what do you think it would need to be like a really good tournament card?
I mean, I definitely agree with your last point, where I was gonna bring up the minor bowler guards, like all these new cards, excluding the Mega Minion. I think the Mega Minion is like completely different. But,
Mega Minion came out of the gates and just like pushed the door down. It's like, I'm the top 5 troop in the game. Get out of here.
Yeah, and the Inferno Dragon definitely needs his time, because like with the minor, it opened up a whole new area of like tactics that no one didn't even think about until people just did it, and it opened up like all these archetypes and these minor poison decks, and we just gotta give Inferno Dragon a little bit of time to find its like place.
I haven't seen a lot of zap bait decks with it yet, and that to me seems like one of the stronger outlets for that card. Like if you're playing a deck with Sparky and Inferno Tower and Inferno Dragon and what the hell Minion Horde or something like that, like there's only so many things they can reasonably zap, and they need to zap a lot of those things.
I've seen people in like my chats play Inferno Dragon. They've posted a lot of their deck pictures, and the interesting one that I saw was one by Jess7. He's playing like this Inferno Dragon with like Furnace and Goblin Hut, and there were more cards like Poison, Miner, and then no Pump. He didn't need any of that, and I tried it out, and what I noticed was that the Inferno Dragon, if you have this like constant stream of units coming out, and you have like the pressure with the Miner to keep the game stable, the Inferno Dragon actually does really well, placed at like the right time under this like constant stream of pressure.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. So
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in the future, people are gonna find out like where he fits or she. I don't know.
That's a good point.
And I'm waiting for that. I can't wait to see where you would put a walking and flying Inferno Tower.
Right. There's actually, I think, a lot of aggro potential for the card because something like just Inferno Tower and Ice Spirit requires you to react to it. Like you can't ignore an Inferno Dragon, so I almost wonder if its place is less in these big giant push decks or Lava Hound decks and more as like a solo split pusher card. Like maybe it goes well in double Prince decks, right? Because like if you see Bakalol's double Prince decks, he's usually trying to do split pushing almost every time he can, and Inferno Dragon is something you can't really ignore. And if I have double Prince in one lane and Inferno Dragon in the other, you're going to have to like split your elixir up in some way there. And I think that could be interesting for sure.
I think so too. The like people are putting Inferno Dragons where they think it's so straightforward to put it in.
Yeah.
Let me just put it here where it belongs behind a tank, like every other card in the game.
And that only works with Mega Minion.
Yeah. It's great.
God, how good Mega Minion?
There's been a complaint lately about Mega Minion being kind of hard to target when there's a Mega Minion and a Giant. I've been there too. I wonder if there's a placement for Inferno Dragon that just kind of really makes it hard to target like that, when you put it behind a Giant or something. One
deck that I was really excited about, and I talked about it a little in our chat, and then yesterday Ash YouTube did really well, had 2 separate 12-win challenges with this idea, was Golem, Mega Minion, Inferno Dragon. With the logic behind playing those 2 cards with the Golem is that the Golem is a huge base, right? A big old fat circle. And the slow-moving air units are actually better because they don't fly ahead of your Golem, and they can actually sit on top of it. So you have this big circle, little Mega Minion or Inferno Dragon on top of it. Anything they play is going to target the Golem, and instead of the Inferno Dragon having to run around it, like, Mini P.E.K.K.A. and Princes get stuck behind these big giants, the Inferno Dragon just like goes to whatever side it needs to go to clean up the trash mobs around it. And there's been I watched Ash win 24 challenge games in like 2 hours with this idea. So I think there's definitely a lot of potential for the card. I agree with you, Sopa, though. People just tend to put things in existing decks. I think it's a really interesting way to end this segment. We got one more new card coming out in 2 weeks. We think we know what it is, but we're not sure. We'll save that for another episode. What card, in a very short description, would you like to see added to the game? Like just a card out there that you'd be like interested in seeing more of, even if it's like, I'd like a duplicate of this existing thing. Anyone jumping at it?
Right.
Thunderstorm.
Thunderstorm? What's that? Is that another Zap Lightning? No, is that a card from Clutch Clans?
About this.
It would be like a 9 elixir like lightning, but it does like a storm to where it lasts maybe like 5 seconds and it just rains lightning in a small area.
Lightning poison.
Yeah, pretty much.
Lightning poison. I would actually, and I can't believe I'm saying this now because I'm pretty sure Seth and Rumham and May would be very upset with himself for saying this, but I would kind of like to see a second Hog Rider in the game. I think It's really cool to see how redundant effects open new decks. Like we talked about the double laser, double Inferno, double Prince was really cool. The new like double Dragon Lava Hound decks are interesting. Having two different minions are cool. Like having duplicate effects is actually pretty interesting because it allows new things to enable. And I feel like Hog Rider is the archetype that kind of got left behind because there's only one Hog Rider and you can have your one answer to it and there's only so much they can do, that if there was a deck that had another like cheapy 3 to 5 elixir Hog Rider sort of thing, I'd be interested.
Think about it. There's a lot of cards that are just fat hit point sink tanks that move slowly. There's only one, semi-fat one that moves fast, and that's Hog Rider. But literally everything from Knight to Golem is a slow-moving tank, so there is no spot in the game right now for something like a Hog Rider. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Hog Rider Swarm.
Exactly.
Hog Swarm. I saw somebody playing with a Hog Mirror deck. I think it was Nick at Night or somebody on YouTube, but of course people have tried that for ages and it's never really worked.
No.
One of the ideas I liked was I'm a little scared of this, but I'm going to pitch it anyways. Mega Minion Horde.
Oh god.
That's air barbs, buddy. We've talked about air barbs a million times. Give me 3 mega minions for like 7 or whatever, 8 or whatever. Yeah.
Good luck flying that through the thunderstorm.
I like that because I think it would be cool. It would open. It's like it's kind of like Three Musketeers to me. You've got a lot of expensive cards that are big, fat tanks, whether it be P.E.K.K.A. or Golem or whatever. You don't have a lot of cards like Three Musketeers where they're sort of glass cannons that cost a ton.
Yeah.
So having another card like Three Musketeers, I think, just opens other kind of archetypes. How would you play a Mega Minion Horde?
Sure.
What kind of deck would you play that in? Would you just kind of swap it out for a similar deck to the Three Musketeers one?
I definitely like the idea of army in a box cards. Like Three Musketeers is cool because it enables control decks to be very control-y, and then they just have one card that's going to win them the game. I like the idea of like a 7, 8, or 9 cost card that has like a tank and a ranged attacker in it, kind of thing. Like, it's like the brothers, the Bash brothers, and one's like the melee dude and one's like the musketeer guy. And for 7, you kind of just get like the combination there together, just because I think that allows more types of decks to be enabled, and it also creates card variety. Like, so instead of every control deck also playing Giant and Mini P.E.K.K.A. just because they need to, they can be a control deck, and then their tank is like part of this package deal that they buy. Hit me. Now give me some good ones, Soap. You've been thinking real hard.
It just kind of came to me, but I think this game is so. I don't know how this would work, but I kind of want a card that has like a countdown timer to it, like in games where you have like I don't know why this one's coming to my head, but in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's like this. I remember my cousin had this card that if you, I don't know, there's like if you have all 5 cards like on the field, and then a timer goes off or something, like a amount of turns pass, like you'll do this amount of crazy damage or you just win the game.
I don't know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that Blue Eyes White Dragon?
Wait, hold on. I think I've heard of this. Is that the Exodia?
I've heard that too.
Yeah,
Voltron. If you get all 5 Power Rangers, they become a better Power Ranger.
I have also never played Yu-Gi-Oh, but I heard it through Hearthstone.
But yeah, so I like the idea. Like, definitely, actually, Nader should be really into this idea because Giant Skeleton is like probably the closest thing in the game to that, right? Like, there's this 3-second effect that you kind of have to play around and delay. I definitely like the idea. We actually talked about this a little bit. The idea of like an elixir collector that instead of collecting elixir, absorbs your leaked elixir. So like I spend elixir and then it just sits there, and when I leak elixir, it charges up, and then once it's fully charged, it like turns into a thing and starts walking like a statue that comes to life. All 4 of us really enjoy building our own decks. And what I'd like to talk about next is deck building theory, sort of where you get your deck ideas from. Whenever you're building decks, what are you looking for? How do you improve upon them? Building your own deck is one of the most fundamental skills of a Clash Royale player, but it's also one of the hardest skills to pick up and learn from, so we can talk about that here. Clark Kent, when you're building a new deck, like maybe with Inferno Dragon, what do you what's going through your mind? Like, what are you sort of trying to set up when you starting with a brand new fresh deck idea?
With a brand new fresh idea, I just go with, first of all, I'm really defensive, so I think about what is actually in the meta right now. So let's take Giant Poison, and then I'll think of what counters that. and then I'll just start putting counters in a deck, and then I'll be like, okay, what do I actually need, and how am I going to win this game when it comes down to it? So either whether I minor poison the end, or if I'm just building up like a hog push, or if I'm just countering, making the elixir advantage, and just building a push off whatever's lasting of my defense. It just depends on my mood, and it's just how I counter the meta. So right now, for instance, I'm playing around with Tombstone, which has been a great counter to everything. Even though it really dies quickly and, poison, it still has enough distraction, and the leftover skeletons last just long enough to do some damage to that giant. And it's only 3 elixir. So, I mean, you have plenty to counter the stuff behind real quick, and then the giant only maybe gets 1 hit off, maybe, if that. So, to me, it's all about countering first, and then worried about the win condition later.
Awesome. Sopa, what do you do when you're, I know you and I are more like tweakers. Like Naders and Clark Kent are the kind of people who just think up like wackadoodle ideas and start going for them. You and I are more like refiners. We sort of take other people's ideas and try to find good substitutes to improve it a little bit. What, when you're looking at decks and trying to get ideas for what to play next, what catches your eye? What's the sort of thing that makes you go, oh, I got to try this thing out?
When I take a look at decks, I try to see whether or not there's a balance to the deck. I want to make sure that when you have these cards, that there's no, that they don't, that, some cards don't do the exact same thing as others. Like I want almost every card to be as versatile as possible so that I have as many responses to whatever my opponent does. I don't want to go into a game and just be like, okay, I can't play against Lava Hound because I have to go 3-crown them because I don't have any anti-air, I don't have this and that. So when I take a look at decks, I try to imagine like how it would play out. I try to see like where its core is at, like what is its win condition, how does it support, does it have enough spells, does it need a building, and like that experience just comes from taking looks at a ton of different decks and playing them through like my Clash career. Mainly when it comes to like building my own decks, I'll just put together cards that I'm more familiar with. I want to, like, if I want to play a deck, I've put so much time into Miner, so I'm really familiar with Miner. I'll make a deck with Miner, and then I'll think about what goes well with Miner. Here's Miner Poison, here's Miner Cycle, here's Miner as a way to get in behind enemy units so that my 3 Musketeers and my P.E.K.K.A. can get through. So, yeah, like, overall, I just try to put cards together that are really, really like synergistic, and then have roles that need to be filled to round out a deck.
Cool. So Naders, how do you go about building a new deck? I mean, you start with Giant Skeleton, and then you've got to figure out what the next 7 cards are.
Yeah, exactly. What's going to keep my Giant Skeleton alive and get it to a tower?
Tower and
yeah, he's just all-star cast of supporting units.
That actually, that started as a joke, but that actually is how I try to build Giant Skeleton decks. But when I'm building a normal deck, like any deck, I actually kind of go about it the opposite way that Clark mentioned. He kind of goes defense first. I try to think about the win condition first. Like, what kind of deck is this? What's going to do damage to this tower and kind of take it down, and build from there. So start with whatever your main push is, whether it's a fat tank and some damage, or something like a miner deck where you're throwing miners and knights and lots of small stuff at them. What's your win condition, and build from there. I kind of have this really OCD way of how I organize every one of my decks. I think that's kind of a common experience for a lot of people, but I when I make my decks, it's like, no, the spells go in this corner, and the tank goes up here, and the thing goes over here. So yeah, start from win condition, plug in some spells, usually plug in an investment building like pretty much always Pump, but sometimes Furnace and other things. And then round it out with smaller, cheaper cards that help you cycle and that support you on whether it's defense or offense. Things like the Goblins, the Ice Spirit, the Fire Spirits. And then you kind of look at your deck at the end and say, my test for a deck is, A, does it answer the meta, what's popular right now? And B, do I have kind of like 2 or 3 answers for anything that I'm likely to see, whether it's Lava Hound decks, Giant decks, Hog Riders. What are the things that I'm going to see out there on the ladder or tournaments, and do I have a couple things to counter them? That's often thinking about things like air defending troops that can target air. If I only have like a princess or a musketeer, one thing that's going to target air units, I'm a little iffy about that deck until I get some practice against air. Is this actually enough to, handle those kind of decks? So anyways, yeah, that's my philosophy.
Yeah, I tend to be a very aggressive player. I really like to punish opponents when they do very predictable plays. So what I tend to do is think about what really predictable openings there are, and then like how would I counter that. For example, one of the most common things we see right now is an Elixir Collector in the back or a Giant in the back. And I remember the one deck that I've been working on like right now is a Mirror Goblin Hut deck, which is the stupidest idea. But the idea started because I was like, oh, people are going to play Elixir Collector. Well, if they're going to do that, how could I dump like all 10 of my Elixir into some super Elixir Collector, knowing that as soon as they play their Collector, they're not going to attack me right after. So it's like, knowing that, how can I kind of come at them again with like punishing them for their own decisions. I do the same with a lot of decks where if I see the same spell over and over again, like I'll have games where my Collector will get poisoned 10 games in a row. And I go, man, how can I really punish people for having poison and aggressively playing it on Elixir Collector? So then I'll build a deck that has every single thing that you'd ever want to poison in it, all in one 8-card deck, and then try to like hammer that idea and discover what interactions are working better for me than others, which cards are matching up against my opponents. If I have some cards that are just sitting there in my hand and not being played all game, well then, okay, those are the ones that I can take out and try to put in something more relevant.
That's the other thing. Constantly tinker with your decks.
Oh, yeah.
You want to make sure you've played enough games that like you're getting a feel for the deck and whatever. But like you said, if there's a card that's constantly sitting in your hand, you're just waiting for the chance to use it, and it never gets used. That's probably not the best card for that deck,
Right. So I'll start building a 3 Musketeers deck with like Elixir Collector, 3 Musketeers, which I don't want to be fireballed. So then I'll put, Princess, Barbarians, like every other thing that you might be interested in bowlering or fireballing or whatever, and then try to 3 Musketeers carry it. The most recent deck I've been playing is kind of like a lot of people, the Lava Hound all-air deck, which is sort of the same thing, right? People are trying to get away with just one Musketeer in their deck or just one Princess in their deck. So it's like, cool, how can I overload their ability to defend against air pushes because they clearly only have the one answer in their deck for it. Which is how I got to Lava Lightning. That was like one of my things I was so excited about leading in these last balance updates was like, Inferno Tower is they only have one Inferno Tower, so what can I do to get around their one Inferno Tower?
So the problem that I have with that deck and any deck like Lava Loon comes to mind, even Giant Balloon kind of comes to mind, but like a deck where if you're stuck with a certain set of cards, you just you're so like say they throw something at you like a hog push right off the bat, and your hand is like Lava Hound, Balloon, Elixir Collector, Zap.
Oh,
what are you gonna do?
Give up a tower.
Yeah, give up a tower, and that's probably the right choice.
I don't play Balloon.
That's kind of why I prefer not to run decks like that.
Yeah, I agree.
I like a lot of two-way cards. I like a lot of versatile spells and things like that, but I don't ever want to be caught in a situation. It still happens from time to time, but you don't ever want to be caught in that situation where you're like, all 4 of my cards are worse than useless right now.
You've never lived until you've lightning to hog goblins push. That's when you know you've hit rock bottom.
I beat a guy yesterday who he was already beat, but he lightninged my goblin barrel, which was the funniest thing I'd seen in a while.
I gotta live. So if you were starting over again at level 1, knowing what you know now, let's pretend we all don't have like 4 accounts each, but let's say you were starting a new account right now today. What deck would you play and why? Isopo, and takes away? So you're starting over.
Start a level 1 account?
Yeah, well, yeah, like I mean, like, and you can play, you can level up. It's not like a level 1 account, but if you were starting over or your younger brother started playing today and you had to tell them sort of what to do. I know when I first started, it took me forever to get on to cards like Hog Rider and Valkyrie. I just wasn't like picking them up. If I had to start over,
what did you play the first time?
Giant Musketeer got me pretty much to like Arena 4 or 5. And then I started buying gems and stuff, and I forget what then I started playing. I was streaming and stuff, so I started playing weird stuff. I played Golem a lot. Like, as soon as I got my hands on Golem, I played that quite a bit. But I've always been a big tank player. And I actually, even at my mini account, my Rum Hamilton account, I, like, kind of stuck with that giant plan. If I could do it over again, I would 100% play Trifecta from level 1. Like Valkyrie, Hog, Musketeer. That deck seems so good, and you have all the cards in Arena 1, or except for the Hog. But I don't know.
My answer would be the exact same thing. That's what I would play too, is Trifecta. It's just because it's so versatile in the beginning, and just working your way up. You can play it all the way to 5,000. It doesn't matter.
If you've seen those new Supercell Super Combo commercials that are going around, the ones that just got released, I think today, I actually like them. Okay, so you're shaking your head. I like them. I think they're cute. I think they're not meant to teach somebody who's never played the game before, like how to play Giant Poison, right? They're more of, I think the goal of those commercials is to teach people to look for combos. So when you install the game, instead of just feeling like all these troops are kind of random or the same or whatever, it teaches you to sort of look for like, this guy's bad at this one's good at this, I'm going to put them together and then I'll have a better deck. But one of the ones in it is actually the Barbarian Hut, Goblin Hut combo, which I'm glad they included that, because I think that is one of the first strategies that any new player sort of sees and they just get it. They're like, oh, this thing makes troops and this thing makes troops. If I could get 2 of them out, that's a whole bunch of free troops, and I don't have to do anything. And I think that's good that they're trying to push new players into looking for those sort of combos, and they picked a really obvious one right there.
That's one of the first things you have to learn as a deck builder, though, is like, you have to think about your deck as a whole, not just individual cards. You know, when I was new, it was like, this card is really good, and this card is really good, and this card is really good. But, like, together, the package, do you have everything covered? You know, that's why I think a lot of new players, even if they're really good, they lose against a lot of certain matchups and whatever, because they're not thinking of their deck as this like whole entity. They're thinking all of these individual cards are really good, so therefore I should win. The worst example of that you see is like when they have like 4 tanks in their deck or something, you know, Giant, P.E.K.K.A., Golem, whatever.
Or anybody with a Giant Skeleton deck, I mean.
Or anybody who hasn't realized that Giant Skeleton's pretty terrible too.
I have one that's actually pretty... Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I was gonna say, unless you're a weirdo like King K and myself.
Okay, King K gave me a Giant Skeleton Expo deck, and having never played it before, I'd had a 6-win Grand Challenge, which isn't great, but given that it's like a goof deck that I've never played before, it was actually a lot of fun, because you play it like X-Bowler, right, where you put the Giant Skeleton behind your King Tower, and then when it walks up, you put the Expo down in front of it, and it's both hit points and removal for anything that ends up getting to the Giant Skeleton, while the Expo's just like...
The thing about Giant Skeleton, though, is a lot of the wins that you pick up it's not because the card is good. It's strictly because people are like, what is this, new card? I haven't played against this in, like, months. So
they forget that it explodes!
They make easy mistakes and stuff, and you kind of take advantage of that. So, yes, I still think it needs a buff really badly. But, yeah, you do pick up a lot of wins just because people don't know exactly how to respond, and sometimes they haven't built their deck to have enough to respond to that, you know?
Sure. Yep. By the way, I did build one Giant Skeleton deck just for fun. I got 10 wins in the Grand Challenge with it. It was a Giant Skeleton Minor Lightning deck. It was so good.
Clark Kent is the worst clanmate of all time, because I don't know if he works or not. He sits at his desk at work all day and gets like 12-win Grand Challenges and posts them all day. So like, you're literally doing anything else, and he's like, another 12-win, and you're like, what do you mean another? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And that does it for Royale Roundtable Episode 4. Next week, we have the Season 2 Championships for the SuperMagicalCup. 16 of the best players in the Clash Royale community are coming together, and none of them are on screen right now. So that's even better, because we can ask them, who do they think is going to win? It's a really stacked field. We've got the bracket here, or the groups here on the screen between us. Naders, you know a lot of these players. You've been watching a lot and seeing them in action. Who is your quick prediction for who's going to win and why?
It's tough because literally every person on this list, you know, in another list, I would say that person will win because they're all so dang good. But, gosh, I don't know. Just somebody who has a lot of probably high-level experience, you know, won 15K tournaments, something like that. And one thing that we were talking about was in the first Season 1 Invitational, somebody who came out of nowhere with a deck archetype that nobody had really been seeing a lot before was Clyde with the Giant Poison. I think if somebody brings a really innovative deck that's also very effective against everything else, everybody else is playing, that's going to be the person who wins. I can't really pick a single person. If you forced me to, I'd say C. McHugh. He's my boy.
All right. Clark
All
Kent.
these guys are my. I love all these guys though. They're all great.
100%. It's actually, it sucks to pick because in some way you're hurting someone's feeling by picking any of them. Clark, you're looking at the field. Who do you think is going to take this home?
Well, first of all, they're all winners to me.
Clark finished 60th on the leaderboard, I think. So.
The great
Just
PR answer.
Still a bit higher than me too. So yeah, thanks.
If I had to pick, I mean,
You do have to.
Actually, as someone that's a really, really defensive player, just because if you can play defense, you're going to be able to counter everything. And so I'm going to go with Marcel P because he's going to come out with some rocket deck that's going to be like, hey, I'm going to mirror my mirror and have 3 rockets.
Yeah, he is an incredibly grindy defensive player. I'll give him that. He actually gave me a rocket cycle deck the other day. Been playing it. I am awful at those decks. Sopo, you're looking at the field. I know that you're familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of a lot of these players. Who do you think's going to cut through this field and take the whole thing home?
So before I talk about who I think has the best chance of going through these groups, I'd like to say that Clash Royale is in a state right now where any player can take the games off of any other player. There's no best player in the game because there's no SMC is trying to be that place where the best players everybody comes together. But unlike these huge esports, you don't have that. As long as you're a top player. That's the addendum.
We're definitely not at the part.
There's a reason nobody's won twice in a row and done some of the bigger things. It's because exactly like you're saying, these guys are all so good that they're any given day they're going to take games off the other person.
So hard.
Yeah.
It's so difficult.
We're not at the part yet where people can just pre-fire arrows and know they're gonna hit and stuff like that. We'll eventually get to that level of hyper top level play. But I agree that right now there's just a bunch of great players, but no god tier players quite yet. So who do you think's?
It's sort of hard because this is a card game, and a lot of it is dictated by hands. If you put 2 great players together and they have to play 2 different decks, a lot of it will come down because they'll know the interactions so well and they'll know how the game plays out. But when I look at the group, I can't ignore that Patriots did win 3 SMCs, extremely solid. Yeah, you cannot say that about anybody else, and everybody else who I've watched, I've seen some sort of inconsistency to them. And even though Patriots, he's pretty new, relatively new. He's won 3. He's done very well in 15Ks. He won CRL almost all of his matches, and has multiple top 8 placings. That Patriots will probably come in as the most consistent player. That's who I would like to put my bet on. I know that there are big names like Clyde, Trainer Chris, and Vizard and stuff. Yeah. Well,
one thing I was going to say is nobody has experience in a format kind of exactly like this except for Clyde. I think. Well,
and Woody and a handful. A handful of people. The Season 1 championships is the only other time we've done this format, and you're right. There's not a ton of overlap from Season 1 to Season 2, so only a handful are really familiar with how the format works.
Your Saturday SMC invitationals have gotten really stacked with competition, but there is nothing quite like this. Clark and myself, having been there before, I can say this level of competition is rough. It's every game is a final.
Yeah, it's an all-star event. It's awesome. It's great. It's so fun for me to cast. I can't really pick anyone because I'm a sort of biased competitor here, but I will say that I'm really bullish on Lava Hound decks, and I think that players who are very strong with playing Lava Hound are in a good advantage because I think it matches up well against Giant Poison and the minor Inferno decks that are out there. So somebody like Clyde or Procol or even Vizard played a Lava Hound deck at the final SMC of the season. I think those sort of players who can master Lava Hound and also be prepared for its bad matchups are the most likely players to go deep in the tournament. But I've
already changed my mind to Clyde, and if you ask me again in an hour, I'd probably be on Woody or somebody else. So yeah.
You keep with the theme. You got to go with level 99. Number 16 is going to take it all again.
It's true. Hey, actually, really, I'll go. The storylines are really great in each group because the first group has 2 silent members in it, and also there are 6 total wins in that first group because Patriots has 3, Marcus has 1, and Clyde has 2. So there's a bunch of wins in that group, and then the very bottom group is like the always the bridesmaid section, where it's a bunch of people who finish second or top 4 like half dozen times each, but no one's actually taken home a title. So there's a lot of interesting. The second group is kind of a bummer. 3 Reddit alpha members in the same group, so they're gonna have to either figure out how to beat CMQ or scheme and knock each other out or something. I don't know. So if you're watching this video, make sure to go to our Twitter account, the Super Magical Cup Twitter account. You can download this bracket, fill it out yourself, retweet it back at us, and after the championship, the best bracket, the winning bracket, is going to take home $100. So by all means, fill out the bracket, tweet it back to us, and we will see you October 15th for the Season 2 championships. We're going to wrap up this episode of Royale Roundtable now. My co-host Naders and I are here every week. Clark Kent, before we let you go, you got anything to promote?
Just, guys, keep going at it. Thanks for watching.
Got a new Twitter handle.
Yeah, I got new Twitter handles right here. You can come, tweet me, and I'll tweet you back sometimes. It's cool.
Probably.
Might even retweet you. Yeah. Isopa, what times do you normally stream?
I'm a streamer. I stream Sunday to Thursday from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to like 1 or 2 in the morning. Pretty long. Thank you for having me on the show. It was a blast. I have my Twitter handle down there. Follow me there. Follow me on Twitch. And if you want to add me on Facebook, I don't know. A lot of people have been adding me. It's a Isopa space CR. I have like 100 pending one, but I'm going to try and add as many of you guys as possible if you guys want. But yeah, thank you. It was great. Talking Clash with like top players or people in the community is just always great.
It's a blast every time.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week on the 5th episode of Royale Roundtable.
Bye.
See ya.